Well, September of 2025 is definitely going to be a month that we're not going to remember anytime soon. So much senseless gun violence, so much political turmoil in this country, tensions at an all-time high, that anytime I sit down to do another video about another senseless shooting, I really don't even know where to begin. But I will begin right here and say this. I'm really getting sick and tired of having the conversation where we start off by saying, oh yeah, which shooting are you talking about? There are so many of them happening so fast and so quickly that we can't even wrap our mind around one until another story breaks. And then we catch ourselves saying, oh yeah, I forgot about that one. And folks, this is one of those things that we should never face in this country, but it sure shouldn't be so much that we become desensitized to it. And that's what I feel like is happening. And I feel like that the political climate is getting so hot and everyone is getting so at each other's throats. And then we have a leader at the top who is doing absolutely nothing to cool it down, absolutely nothing to rein it in. Is just, to me, in my opinion, throwing more fuel on the fire that I don't know how we're ever going to really get out from under this one. I have ideas. We all do. We have ideas and solutions, ways to make things better. We have to recognize that we do have a gun problem in this country, and easy access to firearms is a problem. We have to understand that we have a mental health crisis in this country. There's so much we have to talk about and unpack, but we can't have it if we're always going to be having that conversation with unreasonable people who are always just clinging to their pearls. And so we had a mass shooting at a Mormon church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. That one was carried out by Thomas Sanford, who ended up killing 4 people and wounding 8 more. At least that's the number that I have when I sat down to do this video. Thomas Sanford did 4 years in the United States Marines. He was also deployed to Iraq. From everything that I've learned about him so far, and the motive is still unclear, but we've learned that he did have a Trump flag or a Trump sign in his yard. There's photos of him in a Trump shirt. When he drove his truck into the church, he had 2 American flags flying off of it. That's kind of a automatic signal that, hey, that's probably a Trump supporter. But according to the news, he is an unaffiliated voter. And Donald Trump really didn't rush too quick to say the radical left on this one. Instead, he just chose to say there was a war, on Christianity, that Christianity was under attack. But either way you slice it, it's just another day of senseless violence. Before that, in the same 24-hour period, we had a shooting in Southport, North Carolina, that left 3 people dead and more wounded. That one was carried out by a guy by the name of Nigel Edge, who was also 6 years in the Marines. Then we had a shooting on Bourbon Street that left 1 person dead, and I don't remember which one happened first. I just know that the one in Michigan is the one that's being talked about the most at the moment, but they're happening so fast that we may end up forgetting about the Mormon church one by tomorrow evening. And folks, that is not normal, and we should have never been here at this point in American history. And to tell you the truth, people message me all the time asking me for the answers, and I'm to the point where I don't know that I have them anymore, because I just feel like that we're up against such unreasonable people. And Donald Trump always loves to put the blame on the radical left, and he goes so far as to say that there's no problem on the right. There's no problem whatsoever, he says. It's just the radical left. He's deemed Antifa a terrorist organization, even though Antifa doesn't have a headquarters. They don't have a president. It's not an actual thing. It's just a group of people that considers themselves to be anti-fascist. And I don't understand what he's actually trying to say, because I always define fascism here on the show. And it's a governmental system led by a dictator having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all industry, commerce, etc., and emphasizing an aggressive nationalism and often racism. Shouldn't we all be against that? Shouldn't we all be anti-fascism? And if he deems anti-fascism as a terrorist organization, then isn't he kind of admitting to being a fascist? None of it makes sense unless you really dig in and say to yourself, well, this is his way of silencing his critics even more, because now if you go out to a protest and you get deemed Antifa, then you could be labeled a domestic terrorist. We've got so much tension in this country, and we can never seem to bring it in anytime we have to have or try to have a sensible conversation about gun violence, and we say, hey, easy access to firearms is a problem. We need to make it harder for people to get these weapons in their hands. Every time we try to have that argument, we have a group of people who is just clutching to their pearls, not letting them go, refusing to have the conversation, and then we're sitting here trying to figure out what to do next. and you got your friends telling you, hey, just keep your head on a swivel. Hey, just look out for yourself. Hey, just protect yourself. Just defend yourself. Is that really what we're going to allow it to become? Are we just going to sit back and just let it turn into the Wild West? How many people have to die before somebody finally stands up and gives a damn? And I'm really tired of talking about the influencer that died. I really am. I'm tired of talking about that guy. Honestly, no disrespect to the people that loved him or cared about him, but I'm just tired of seeing that guy get talked about so much when we have seen so many children and so many innocent people die, and nobody uttered a peep. Nobody uttered a peep about that. The best we got out of that one was thoughts and prayers for all the children that died. We spent more time talking about a divisive influencer and his death than we did children. And we'll be talking about him probably long after these 3 shootings that I'm talking about today fades away, and we're talking about the next one. And it's just absolute bullshit that that's where we're at in this country. We do have a problem with guns, folks. It's plain and simple. And we have a problem with easy access to guns, and we have a problem with the mentally ill getting their hands on it, and we also have a problem with the political tension in this country at an all-time high. And I know a lot of people don't like it when I blame Trump, but hey, I believe leadership starts at the top. He used to say that himself. He used to say that the president would be the one to blame if the government shut down. He used to say the president was the one that had to get people in the room and talk. But instead now all he does is sits and call everybody a radical left lunatic and say there's no problem on the right. Now this guy, Thomas Sanford, comes out with Trump shirts on. He's got a Trump flag in his yard. They say he's an unaffiliated voter. And notice it's pretty much crickets about this guy. They're not saying anything about it. But if they were to just find a complete treasure chest of this guy praising Trump to the moon, would Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, or anyone else come out and say, hey, we disavow this, hey, we don't agree with this? No, instead, we have seen them pardon domestic terrorists. They want to label Antifa a domestic terrorist organization, a concept that doesn't even exist. They want to call that domestic terrorism, but then what happened on January 6th, those people get pardons, only to turn around and go right back out on the street and do it again? That's the type of leadership we have. So when people says, well, why are you blaming it on Trump? Well, I just feel like a lot of it starts at the top, and the leadership starts at the top. And if we had a president who would first start toning things down, start calling shit out, and then would be willing to have a reasonable conversation. And to everyone that says, well, Trump is there to defend my guns, actually, you've not really been listening to him that hard. Because you could go back to his first term when he was talking with Mike Pence, and he actually said, let's just go ahead and take the guns first. We'll do due process later. And Mike Pence chimed in to say, no, we can't do that. The same thing happened again later with Pam Bondi. He was saying the same thing. Can't we just take the guns first? And then he comes out and says, well, we might have to take them from the trans community because they're mentally ill. So we may have to take them away from trans people. And that's what's being talked about. He tried to duck and dodge when he was asked later about that and say, I don't know. What are you talking about? Oh, these people are mentally ill. Well, hey, get this. If they deem that the trans people are mentally ill and they can't have access to a firearm, they can say the same things about these 2 veterans, so they can end up taking firearms from veterans. And if they take them from veterans, who else can't they take it from? And if everyone's radical left lunatics and everyone's domestic terrorists, then guess what, everybody? We can absolutely find ourselves disarmed, and we can absolutely find ourselves sitting ducks in their religious war. And that's why that more reasonable people have to come together. More reasonable people have to be willing to have the conversation. I know that there's reasonable people on the right side of the aisle, and I know you're going to think I'm crazy for saying this, but there are reasonable people who voted for Donald Trump. There are people who went to the poll and voted for Donald Trump just because Papa always voted Republican, so they thought they would too. And because they were thinking about the price of eggs or whatever the hell at that moment they were thinking about. But there were people that were reasonable that went to vote. We're going to have this conversation. This isn't the country any of us wants to live in. We want to live in a country where we live and let live. We want to live in a country where everyone has a shot at the same American dream as the rest of us. And we don't want to live in a world where we can't even go out to events without looking over our shoulder. When people says to me, Brando, put your head on a swivel, I totally understand. I get it. Trust me, it's been on a swivel for years. But just the fact that we have to say that to one another, that we can't go out and enjoy life, that we can't go out and speak up and protest without that fear, that's not the world that we should be living in. And it's just a true shame that we don't have a leader who can speak up and tone it down. But if he spoke up and toned it down, he wouldn't have an audience, and deep down he knows it, and deep down every one of it's listening to me say that knows that he wouldn't have an audience if he couldn't tap into his WWE-style rhetoric and piss people off. As long as that happens, and as long as people have easy access to firearms, I'm sorry to say, it's probably going to get a whole lot worse. Not trying to bring down the room, but I've lost count on how many videos I've done on this subject. And if you go back to any of them, I'm going to start off by saying, folks, we have a problem. But when are we ever going to face it? When are we ever going to ever look in the mirror and face it? J.D. Vance says the left needs to look in the mirror. I say the right never looks in the mirror. And they say so. Don't say, oh, no, that ain't true. No, they say it's not us. We don't have a problem. But then they go quiet when they clearly do have a problem. And they try to blame it on someone else. All I want to see is a country where we have reasonable conversations about serious issues and we work together. We put our politics aside and we work on it. To me, this isn't a Democrat versus Republican issue. This is an American issue, one that's gotten really out of hand, and one that reasonable people are going to have to come together and work out. Or otherwise, it's just going to continue to circle the drain, and I don't want to see that.